Oh yeah, we're always waiting on Moran.
I mean,
Come
nah,
on,
yeah.
hurry up.
Yeah.
You gotta go.
Yeah.
She's got things to do. She's an important person, and you're not. And you're messing with her timetable.
Oh man, now I don't even get to be on camera this episode.
Yeah, production meeting at
It's
8:30.
already so much better without you on camera.
Yeah, this is my
There's
role.
so much more
is
space. I
already
feel
decreasing.
free.
I know.
Breathe.
All right. So, welcome to the Washdown podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Green. With me is Chris Nelson, my co-host, and our co-host slash producer slash whatever, James Moran, is off camera. He's going to be running everything from back there today. And today we have guests with us. We have Jeanne Brown.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, right into the mic
Yes,
there.
it's like almost awkward.
Yeah,
You're
well,
not the only one that has issues with this.
let's adjust that real quick.
There's two of us that have problems with this.
There. Okay, way better.
I can already hear you better too.
Yeah, good.
All right, so you have been a nurse for 3 years, and and you are a S.A.N.E nurse,
Yes.
which we won't make any jokes about that. Explain to us what that is, so everybody can kind of know.
Yeah, so my sort of niche is more of a comprehensive forensic nursing as opposed to just S.A.N.E. So there are a lot of really, really great programs that focus on S.A.N.E alone, and I think that's something more people are familiar with. But I do a lot of comprehensive forensic work. So while I do S.A.N.E, I also do exams on strangulation patients, domestic violence patients. We do some human trafficking cases, kind of a umbrella term for forensics. And then anytime law enforcement is involved, we're kind of like a connection piece between nursing and them.
So as far as what most people understand, like you watch CSI, right?
Yeah.
And I know I'm comparing it. And it's
Yeah,
not
no,
the same.
that's people are familiar with, yeah.
So when they go out to a crime scene, and they collect all that evidence, you're doing that, but in the hospital setting.
Yeah, and when a human is the crime scene.
Yeah. So you're talking murders, unfortunately, or even a natural death that kind of looks suspicious.
Yeah,
and of course, unfortunately, rape, because it's in our world, unfortunately, but stuff like that. So you're looking for all that, bodily fluids that aren't theirs, skin cells, hairs, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah, anything. Typically, I work in a hospital setting, so while there are some nurses that have work for other agencies and departments, they'll do stuff outside of the hospital setting when a human is a crime scene. But we focus on hospital setting.
So the ones that fire and EMS brings in,
yes,
is the one that you guys are gonna
or walk-ins, yeah,
or walk-ins. I've seen plenty of those.
Yeah, and police will frequently bring them in too.
Oh, from the actual scene? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so sometimes police will be called for other reasons, and then patients and victims will disclose, and then instead of having to have a third-party EMS called, police will sort of initiate that and bring them in themselves.
I didn't know that. Is that now? Are you guys helping the police department because they're overwhelmed in our area?
I think it just depends. I think it's definitely case by case. Sometimes they need EMS calls. Sometimes it's
so like I guess what I mean is when the cops get there and it's an obvious DOA, or it's been something that's been there for a while.
Okay.
And because let's be honest, our crime scene investigators right now have been busy for the last couple years.
Yeah.
Nonstop.
Yeah.
With their caseload and workload. So if they're overloaded there, and it's not something that where EMS would show up because obviously there's nothing you can do to potentially save somebody.
Sure.
But then would they transport to you guys as
Not
help, or is it because
necessarily,
you're not you're better at it, but that is more controlled maybe?
The crime lab would be the next step.
So
probably, depending on the case, yeah.
So it'd be more almost live victims when the live victim is the crime scene.
Correct.
Okay.
Or if it's somebody brought into the hospital.
Okay, so it's not actually somebody who's been there for a while.
Correct.
And they bring them in. So it's
Correct.
usually when we bring them as part of the fire EMS system. Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to get clarification.
Yeah. No, you're good.
I'm kind of an idiot sometimes.
No,
Not gonna
no,
lie.
you're good. You're good. You're good.
I'm the idiot savant of the room.
Well, I'm glad you're asking questions because a lot of people have the same ones. I feel like I get tons of questions all the time from friends and family and stuff, and it's typically the same questions that people have.
Well, it's not a job that most of us. So, like the S.A.N.E one, like Jim and I knew about the S.A.N.E nurses. We've unfortunately had to ask for them before working on an ambulance every now
Yeah.
and then. And it's not one that we like to ask for, but when we were in medical school, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, which I plan on bringing it up, our exposure to a S.A.N.E nurse was, if you're on a rape victim, call for a S.A.N nurse. And it was like, what? What's a S.A.N nurse?
What is that?
What are you talking about? You know, we didn't know. We just thought, you know, I was always under the impression of taking to the hospital and each nurse, like I knew there was a rape kit, don't get me wrong. I mean, we all watched the ID channel and Forensic Files and all that stuff because we're all big nerds. But, you know, it just seemed like any nurse could do that.
Yeah.
And now you got a specialty here that none of us had ever heard of. But it wasn't even glanced over, really. It was just, as a passerby, you're like, hey.
Yeah.
It was gone.
Yeah.
You know, so I've asked for one, unfortunately. I know Jim has. But
definitely in our training, it was
nothing.
You know, if you see this, ask for S.A.N nurse, and you know, well, what about that? Nope, ask for S.A.N. What about nope, ask for S.A.N.
Yeah, and I get we don't want to touch anything and keep as much evidence on that person as possible. Sure. But then there's also the aspect for us being men. You know, a woman's had this traumatic event. She don't want to be around us, especially in the back of an ambulance, to where sometimes even with, you know, your partner, it could be a female, it could be a male, and then the cops on scene could all be male. So you got a bunch of males here and a female rape victim.
It actually absolutely could be a trigger.
And I've driven the ambulance when my EMT partner, who's a female, like, well, you're in the back. I'll write the report later, tell me what's going on. You know, I'll listen, but because I want that patient to be as comfortable as possible.
Yeah.
But there's times when you're just like, sorry.
Yeah.
You got no choice.
Yeah.
You know, it's uncomfortable for us too, because you can empathize, but you don't.
Right.
You don't really understand.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
And I think that's something that's really important to recognize too. You know, one of the worst things you could say to a victim is, I understand, or I get it, or I know how you feel. Because to them you don't. You know what I mean? Even if you've been through something that's similar, or even if you've been through a situation that isn't far off from their situation, to them it doesn't matter how you feel.
Yeah.
You know, that sounds, you know, almost selfish, but it's about them.
Oh, it's absolutely about that. I fully agree with you.
Yeah. And I think, you know, saying those things can almost be worse for them because it almost downplays how they feel, and it downplays the situation that they've been through.
So now they've already been through a traumatic experience before they get to you. So now, I mean, they're fragile as it is, if not broken.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, even before they get to the treatment part, they have to come see you, and now you've got to. And poke and prod is not the right term, but you're swabbing and you're collecting, you know, everything and everywhere. I don't know how to ask this.
How do you navigate those waters?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, because the point that Chris is getting at is it's invasive.
It is.
Basically.
And now you've got a secondary trauma. You're adding onto that trauma they've already had.
Right.
So making it bigger. So how would...
Yeah, and there are a lot of studies that show, or that have looked at, you know, how follow-up evidence collection can almost re-trigger victims. So that's definitely something that I feel like I'm really aware of all the time. And it's a case-by-case situation. So if I'm doing an exam on a patient, I think first and foremost, hands down, I don't bring any cameras in. I don't bring any papers in. It's just me. And, you know, maybe I'll have like a clipboard with like a face sheet or something, but I won't bring that to the bedside. I won't, you know, show any signs that I'm going to be doing anything. And I think that that's important too, because it establishes a connection with the patient where they don't feel like they're just going to be swabbed, or they're going to be photographed, or they're going to be, you know, studied. Like, it makes them feel like they're a person still, and they've already been through something that makes them feel less than human. So that's one thing that I tell people too. I recommend is when you're establishing rapport with a patient, eliminate any extra things that almost identify them as a case. And then I feel like I always start off saying, you can kick me out at any time. You don't have to go through any of this. Now, some cases are reported to police and have to be reported to police depending on the situation. But a lot of times, like, even if they've been through something like this, they have a choice whether or not they want to go through an exam or whether or not they want to have photographs done. Even if there's a case number, they don't have to contribute to that. And I think that that's something really important too, because giving them as much autonomy as they can right off the bat is going to give them power through the whole process. Telling them they can stop at any point, telling them I can take photos, I can swab, or I can only swab, or I don't have to take photos, or, you know, leaving it totally up to them to kind of make the call through our process really helps them feel almost not at ease, but, you know, in control of what's going to happen to their body, because they've just been totally violated.
So it kind of sounds like you're that first step in recovering mentally.
Yeah, I like
because of the way
that.
you're talking to them and giving them that choice, because they've had the power taken from them.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us to understand what happens in rape. I'll be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
men being raped is low, very low compared to women, unfortunately. Well, I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that came out wrong, but you know what I meant.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
So rape's an unfortunate thing. I'll be clear, but give them that some power back, so
Yeah.
it can start to feel a little more human.
Yeah.
So but it's not only traumatic for them. We're going to change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So not just about the victim that's important too, don't get me wrong, but what it does to you, seeing these. I mean, I don't know if it's day after day, if it's, you know, there's big gaps between, which I'd hope there'd be big gaps, but I mean, seeing them consistently though, because of that training you have and that certification.
Yeah, it kind of just depends. I work like a call schedule exclusively. So I can choose, you know, if I do XYZ shift on XYZ week, or if I do XYZ hours. It's just kind of, it just depends. And there's a set minimum and whatever. Some months are busier than others. Some seasons are busier than others. And coronavirus took a hit to these patients. And we can talk about that in a little bit whenever. But I think...
Are you saying that rapes were down because of the virus, or they were up?
No, I think we had a lot of issues with reporting. Not issues. I shouldn't say issues. I think we had changes with reporting when coronavirus hit, because people were staying home. People were isolated. You know, I really worried then whether or not domestic violence was going to be up and reporting was going to be down because people can't get out of the house. Or...
Well, from what I saw on the news, it was domestic violence incidents did increase throughout it. I mean, but also alcohol consumption went up, like skyrocketed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so, and I'm not saying there's a correlation between the two, but I mean,
sure,
it's just numbers.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to consider too with the pandemic. I mean, I don't think anybody expected any of this.
Not to this level.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And you know, kind of a spin off that, I think teachers worry too about child domestic violence. You know, these kids are their outlet, or vice versa. They're kids' outlets. You know what I mean? They come to school, they tell teachers what's been going on.
Yeah, they get away and they're able to say something now. Where at home, you know,
they're in a safe environment. Yeah, for sure. So I think that was another thing that was.
But what about the elderly too? I mean.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm sure you've run into that. I know we have. And the way they're treated, and not just. I mean, I'm talking rape wise too.
Yeah.
You know, nursing homes and stuff like that. Things that you really don't think about. Even we run a nursing home. We don't. That's not high on our what's going on.
Right.
You know, in our algorithm, it's down there at the bottom.
Right.
But I'm sure you've seen more than we have. But unfortunately.
Yeah. So where I work, we do cover elderly abuse as well, and any sort of issue that could be hotlined. They call us just for a second set of eyes. You know, and sometimes. It's easier for us to be able to escalate those issues just because we have experience with law enforcement. We have experience, you know, kind of working this game. So, and I always appreciate it when I get a call about an elder abuse, or even just, you know, a child abuse case, or even if it's not anything that ends up being reportable. Like it's always better to just look into it.
Oh, absolutely. Better be safe than sorry.
Right.
Yeah. So, seeing what you see.
Yeah.
You know, how do you deal with that? Like, what makes it, you know, obviously, you know, the job can be very rewarding, but completely stressful and probably can make you paranoid a little bit.
Yeah.
So how do you deal
constantly
with that?
Seeing how evil another human can be to another human.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest things. I mean, when you work in this industry, you see unhealthy relationships all day, every day. And I think, there's nothing worse than having a conversation with a patient saying, if you go back, you could end up dead. If you go back, he's gonna kill you. This is, you see an escalation in violence, and you see people in domestic violence relationships sort of, you just see it get worse and worse and worse and worse, and it doesn't stop. I think the reality of it is it's, people who are abusers, they don't just stop. And I think it's really, really hard for victims in that situation, not only to get out if they wanted to, but to sort of realize the extent of where it's headed. And, you can only have so many conversations with somebody, but if that's, it's their choice at the end of the day. But, it's really, really hard when you see, you're trying to just give somebody resources and give them advocacy and be there for them. Some people go back, and that's just kind of the nature of...
Well, and kind of to dovetail into that, it's very similar with most mental health issues. I mean, you can put all the resources in front of someone, but it is exactly like the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Right. So you can give them all the resources, you can tell them, hey, from my experience, this is where you're headed, or this is what's going to happen, and these are the steps that you need to do. Until someone is ready to take that step, then they're not going to. I've went through it with family members, I went through it with myself even, that until it was like almost unrepairable, it was like, okay, well, now I should get my head out of my ass.
Right.
But it's not just their mental health that you got to worry about. It's yours as well.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So Jeanne, and how you're dealing with that, the way you're able to stay healthy and have longevity in your career.
Yeah.
You said you've been a nurse for 3 years.
Yeah, I'm a baby.
I'm a baby.
Yeah, I know. I know.
We're kind of coming up, starting on that downhill slide of ours.
Yeah.
And we're both ready to be retired now. We got some time to go.
He's not joking.
So,
we've got a little less than 9 years left until we can retire.
I've had 2 injuries now in less than about a year.
Yeah.
Where that plays a factor, but yours is more of a mental.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, than ours is mental and physical. I'm not saying your job isn't physical, because it is.
Sure.
But it's different.
It's different, yeah. And I think coming into this, you don't know how you're going to process other people's trauma and grief and, emotional distress. I will never forget my very first case I did. I thought I was fine. I walked away from that case. It was a long one. It was a hard one. I walked away from the case, went home, and I thought that when I shut that door behind me when I got home, I could just forget about it. And I was so wrong. I was so wrong. I needed to figure out how to process it appropriately without just boxing it up, right? And I was so mean to my family for like 3 or 4 days after that case. I didn't even know it. I was so bitter. I was sleeping all the time. I was angry. Oh my gosh, I had such a short fuse. And my mom sat me down and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" She's like, "You're not fine. You're off." And I was like, "No, I'm fine. I'm just working a lot." And then my sister and my boyfriend sat me down and they were like, "No, but like, we don't think you're okay." And that's when it sort of like hit me. I was like, man, I've really been mean to these people that I really, really care about. And I was like, maybe this is how I process other people's trauma. And then it happened again. And I was like, okay, I've really got to tune into this, because if I don't, it's just going to tear me down. It's just going to be escalated even further in the future.
So what steps did you take to help? Because, you're still doing the job.
Yeah.
So it seems like you're processing things better, just the way you're talking.
Yeah.
So what have you done to help curb that?
I think the hardest part was just being aware of it. Like I said, you don't know how you're going to process other people's trauma. And I am a firm believer that everybody in healthcare should see a therapist. Maybe not regularly, maybe not, monthly or whatever, but through periods of processing other people's trauma, you've got to figure out how you're going to respond. And some people respond in a physical manner. Some people get, like, actually ill. You know, some people are what I was and are just so mean to their family members for no reason, you know. And I, you know, getting in a couple sessions really helped me figure out what it was about other people's trauma that sort of triggered me. And, you know, certain things that I, you know, went through as a kid, or certain things I went through as, you know, a young adult in college or whatever, like, processing my own issues helped me to process other people's. And I think that's, you know, we've all got stuff, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, if you can't process your own stuff, how are you going to process somebody else's?
Yeah, that is exactly true. And, you know, and that's the thing kind of we were talking about the other day whenever we were talking about relationships. You have to process what's going to make your relationship better with your spouse or whoever is being the healthiest version of yourself.
Yeah.
And if you've got stuff still in that box in your head that you haven't dealt with, well, all the stuff that you're seeing and piling on top of it, it's just accumulating until, you know, then you're a jerk to everybody, or you're an alcoholic, or you're taking oxy, or you're doing whatever you're doing to find some kind of release.
Yeah.
So, I'm a firm believer in, maybe you don't need to go see a therapist, you know, every week or whatever, but you have to at least figure out how to deal with your stuff. Because if you don't deal with it, then, it's going to end up being bad for you.
Right.
You had mentioned earlier that you do have the luxury of kind of picking your schedule.
Yeah.
And so, and with kind of a two-part question here, in regards to obviously knowing when to maybe slow down, when to take a week off or so, and then also in regards to your, like, relationship with your boyfriend. This is you do a job that exposes a lot of evil.
Yeah.
And, you know, a question, you know, almost if he was here, I'd ask him, how does he help you when you see these evil things that maybe you want to avoid emotional or physical intimacy when you come home? Like, it's a slippery slope, and it requires a lot of self-awareness on your part. So what are some of the things that you've noticed or you have educated your family on to look for or kind of help with to help curve you back in the right direction?
Yeah. So typically if I get a case and, you know, I've got plans with my family later that evening or the next day, or, you know, I'm seeing my boyfriend that afternoon or whatever, I'll give them a heads up and say, hey, I'm getting ready to go to a case. Don't know if I'll be around today. Don't know if I'll be in the mood, kind of. And that helps too, because then my family knows she'll call us if she wants to go back to dinner. She wants to go out to dinner. She'll call us if, you know, when she's done with her case or whatever. So they all are really, really awesome about sort of giving me time to process things and, you know, time to be by myself if that's what I want to do. And, you know, Blake's really good too. That's my boyfriend, by the way. I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name.
That's for you guys now.
Everybody knows. It's kind of a common name.
Now tens of viewers know who Blake is.
Wow, you went double digit.
I did.
Ooh,
Hey,
I'm thinking
I don't know if you've noticed, but we're kind of a big deal. We have many leather-bound books.
I would love to live in a rainbow fairyland with him. Holy cow.
But he and my family all, they don't like to hear about it, and that's cool. I don't like to talk about it,
They
really.
don't get inundated with questions like we all do from the general public.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we get asked questions, the same thing, you know, that whole, what's the worst thing? And we all hate that question.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do, too.
Yeah.
Well,
because I'm not going to tell you.
No.
You know, and that's
you don't want to know.
Yeah, you really
Yeah.
And that's kind of a great thing, though, about, you know, the conversation that you have had with your family is, you know, they know to give you that space, and to not ask about it, you know, some people just, like you said, they're, oh, yeah, what'd you do, you know, today? Or, you know, what's the most messed up call you've ever run? And like, well, do you really want to know?
Right, because I guarantee you don't.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't tell my wife a quarter of the stuff that we've done or seen, or I mean,
Right.
some of the cool stuff, you know.
Sure.
But the fun stuff, it makes you, you know, part where you love your job, but
Yeah.
that bad stuff, like, you don't want to I don't bring that home.
No.
Well, and all it does is, we talked about it's secondary trauma,
Right.
and then they end up, oh crap, and now I need a therapist.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, my family's great about.
But that family
knowing.
support's so big too, and I think people forget about that. To where, and I know I did, where when they go through something, that I forget to be empathetic and be there for them.
Yeah.
So because it works both ways.
For sure.
But having that support system, I mean, you're able to unload a little bit, not tell them what's going on, but still process the emotions.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, no, I get it. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it absolutely
Like
did.
both parts?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure.
We don't talk to him.
Yeah, we don't talk to him. Don't look at him.
Sorry.
Just talk directly into your mic.
He's not even here in my view.
Yeah.
So, Jeannie, you also,
I thought he's not here.
I'm just a
Unfortunately, we gave him a mic for some reason. I don't know.
It's kind of
why.
like a haunted
I'm
house.
just kidding.
It's there, but it's like you could hear it, but you just ignore it.
Yeah, exorcism in Chris's basement.
I feel like next time I'm just going to come in and this thing's going to be unplugged.
I'll take a nap, man. You don't scare me.
Obviously, with the S.A.N.E nurse, that's not your only job. You're also a full-time emergency room nurse.
Yes.
And you don't just work in some smaller hospital. You're in a trauma center, a stroke center, a STEMI center, one of the largest hospitals in the metropolitan area.
Mm-hmm.
For those that don't know, and I think we still have a lot to learn too, be honest and explain the culture that nurses, especially right now, even through this pandemic, are experiencing day in and day out in the emergency room.
It's brutal. I think, simply put, it's brutal. I have seen a lot of violence, a lot of anger and aggression, and unfortunately I just don't, it's not new, and it's not going away anytime soon. And I started where I am right before the pandemic hit, right before COVID. So I remember starting, and then...
It's a trial by fire.
What?
Yeah, trial by fire.
Right, yeah, for sure. But I remember starting, right when we went into quarantine. And so I can't say whether or not COVID had a difference in violence in the ER, but I can tell you it's brutal. I mean,
So
nurses being assaulted and hit by patients. And
that's not new. I mean, that's been going on, and a lot of people don't understand that, and then really nothing happens to these people because they're mentally altered, whether it's drugs, alcohol, and blood sugar. I don't really count. That's me personally, but drugs and alcohol, there's no excuse for hitting somebody else. You know what I mean? Just because you're high or drunk, you don't get a pass.
And I say the same exact things to my victims. Victims I work with, as a forensic nurse, I tell them I don't care how drunk you were, how high you were, how drunk they were. It's still not okay. So why can't it translate into the ER setting?
And it should, because we're all here to help, and I've been swung at, I've been hit. I know Jim has too. Spit on, kicked, all that stuff.
I still got a bite mark scar from 2 years ago.
Dude, that was a game. Talk about stuff like that. Anyway, no, but I mean things like that. So he's got a bite mark scar from a patient. Somebody's helping, and what do you think was nothing? Probably nothing happened, and that's what normally we see. So now that plays a part in to our mental health too. If people don't care,
Right.
Why should I go out of my way to help somebody, even though it's my job and that's what I want to do? For me to get beat up and essentially, because you really can't throw a punch back. You're not supposed to.
Sure.
But I mean, we're not punching bags either.
Right.
Jeannie, how almost demoralizing is it to know, like you referenced earlier in the podcast, the power you go out of your way to give to your victims? You do just little things like bringing paper and a camera in a room. Whatever you do, whatever you try to do that you can restore power to your victims, you do. Where we all know, or at least in this room, we know in an emergency room setting or in a hospital setting, the nurses aren't given that same power. Whether it's by the laws on the books in the county or the state, the management in the hospital, whatever it may be, you're treated it worse than you would be treated as if you were a civilian. How hard is it to continue to show up to work every day knowing it's not fair for you when you're doing everything you can to help people?
Yeah. I think while it is very hard, and you walk into the building, and it's kind of in the back of your mind, like, am I going to get hurt walking in? Am I going to get hurt walking out? Am I going to get hurt inside the building? But I love my job. It sounds horrible, but I love my job, and I wouldn't trade it. While I wish there are some things I could change, it's not going to stop me. And that sounds so twisted, that you're like signing up for potential whatever to happen to you.
Yeah, but look who you're talking to.
Yeah.
But we love our jobs,
Yeah.
I mean.
So, and I'll ask you this. What do you do to mitigate that risk? Because, there's things that we do in the fire service to mitigate risk. When, like we go into a burning building, well, we wear an air pack and bunker gear.
Yeah.
Is to mitigate the risk as much as possible.
Yeah.
So, like, what's that for, an ER nurse?
When I started where I work now, my preceptor that I was initially with, who's now one of my best friends in this whole world, used to sit me down at least once a week, maybe daily before we'd leave, and she'd just give me like 2 cents, like, here's how you're going to combat this situation, here's how you're going to deal with this situation. Even if you question whether or not you need PD or security, call them anyway. It's her voice in the back of my head is still there all the time because she's been through all of these things and I hadn't yet. And I think I really, really appreciated like having that in my back pocket for when the time came, because it wasn't an if, it was a when. And having not gone through these situations, I had come from a smaller hospital. I really appreciated that.
So basically,
like, where's your backup, and like, where's your meds if you need them, or she always said just be preemptive about using your resources, and that's going to help you a ton, because the minute you need meds for somebody and you don't have them, or the minute you need PD or security and you don't have them, your hands are tied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a long time waiting.
Right.
1 minute can,
for sure,
a lot of stuff can happen in 30 seconds or a minute.
For sure.
So yeah, it's being proactive, and preparing for the worst, hoping for the best, but prepare for the worst.
And she sat me down early on when I started there too, and she had said, I know you see tons and tons and tons of trauma with your forensic nursing. Mm-hmm. She's like, you're going to see it here too. And it's going to be different, and it's going to be hard, and you're probably going to see some of the same stuff. And, she was one of the people that really encouraged me to kind of hone in on where I'm and how I'm going to process other people's trauma, because I thought I was good at it then, but I thought I was going to be fine my very first day, I just feel like no matter how well you think you process it, there's always room to grow.
Absolutely, and you always learn those lessons the hard way.
Yeah.
No matter preparing through school is going to actually prepare you for that first victim you see, or that first call you run, or the first trauma that comes in the doors.
Yeah.
It's like everything goes blank for a second.
Yeah.
Before your training kicks in.
Yeah, well, there's a difference between book knowledge and practical application.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's in every career field.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from engineering to, whatever you want to talk about, you can look at it on paper, but whenever it's right there in front of you and you're actually doing it, or, it's different, because those decisions that you have to make are right now. It's not, hey, let me look that up.
Right.
These
are things that matter.
Yeah.
So now I do have a question. So you work for the company that does the same stuff as its own company? Is that right?
Kind of, yes.
Okay. And then, so you go to multiple hospitals to do that?
No.
Okay,
well, yes, kind of.
Yes
and no.
Let's just be super vague.
Super vague. Yes and no.
So the hospital you work at, you're probably the same nurse, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, another hospital down the road, like their same nurse is on vacation or whatever, they don't have one on staff. Can you get that call to go and help there, even though it's not in the same system?
No.
No. Okay, so you stay in the same system?
Yes.
All right. So you can work at the main hospital and then go south to the other hospital.
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense. I'm just curious because I took it as it was you had your ER hospital job and then you had your S.A.N.E. because
That's correct.
but it was another company essentially, like a
It
different
is
job.
kind of.
So like so like the fire department and then I have a mowing business type thing.
So let's get out of the rabbit hole, Chris.
So, anyway,
if you would like a shovel to dig your way out.
Basically, what I was getting at, what I was going to is, what does the hospital do to help you guys with your mental wellness? And then, if there was another company, I was going to say that's the same question. But so we'll just stick with the hospital.
Yeah.
What does the hospital do for the nurses to make sure you guys are mentally fit and healthy? That way, you don't have those breakdowns and you end up in the psych part of the hospital.
Pizza parties. Duh.
Duh.
Why, so they
Cake
start
on their
looking like me?
birthday.
We don't want nurses looking like me. All right, the beard and all that.
Yeah. No, so in where I do forensics, our management is fabulous. They are really great about scheduling, making sure that we're not sort of overdoing it. And like James has kind of asked, I have that ability to sort of plug in my schedule when I'm sort of ready. Like if I want to do extra for 1 month because, I've been bored or I've been whatever, like I can always pick up more shifts. But if I've had a lot and I've, had some really hard cases that next month, I don't have to do as much. So it just kind of, I have that freedom to sort of regulate how much I can really take, which is really nice. And like I said, our management is fabulous about respecting that and encouraging that. And my full-time job, it's the same kind of thing. I feel like we had a couple really hard things happen this summer, and they brought in, a lot of resources for nurses to sort of process these traumas. And they brought in a therapist who was really great. And, I feel like that there are resources. I think the hardest part is just nurses are stubborn and sometimes don't want to use them, And I'm not
really familiar.
Yeah,
right. I didn't want to.
You mean people who help other people don't want to get help themselves?
Right, and I didn't want to, but I did it anyway, and I'm, I was glad I did. But
it's hard to take that step too.
It is.
Admit you need help and with what you do.
Yeah.
Because everything you've learned through school and then working, like, no, I got this. I know how to do this.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
I mean, we all learn that lesson the hard way too.
Yeah.
And that's the part of the reason for this, so we can help maybe curb that in some people.
Yeah.
That way they don't have to learn that lesson the hard way. And
yeah.
Yep. The help is out there, and pretty much every organization that I know, whether it's fire department, hospital, police department, or whatever, there are resources that are available for people to go. If they need to go talk to a therapist or peer support or something like that, those resources are out there. The problem that I see is that they're not well known. They're not talked about. And mental health still has this, even though it's getting better and it's becoming, more to the forefront, there's still a stigma attached to it.
For sure.
It's still very taboo.
Yeah.
Almost.
But yeah, the resources are out there. It's just a matter of they kind of need to be pushed a little bit more to the forefront. Everybody needs to know, all right, I'm having a problem. This is the number that I can call. And a lot of people don't know that.
What, Jeannie, what would you say in the fire service and in the police department, the stigma is actually, it's improving, but it is there for mental health. It's for a long, long time. Both jobs are very deep in tradition. And it was looked at as a sign of weakness. It is improving. It's getting better. I've worked in an ER before. We're there constantly. Would you say that's as prevalent in an emergency room or a hospital setting as we're seeing it in fire and police departments?
I think yes and no. I think I still think that, resources are there, but people just don't know they're there. But I do think maybe in the hospital setting, people are more likely to want to get to these resources if they can get to these resources, or, find out where they are, or, find that phone number or website or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think the taboo and stigma is there. I just don't think, and this is just from personal experience, but I think that people are more likely, I think, to seek these resources, if, like I said, if they can get a hold of them.
What would you...
I can see that. I mean, I guess we really don't know about a lot of them until here recently, and because of some exposure for people we know. But with the hospital, it makes sense that you guys have more access because you're giving it to patients all the time.
Right.
But then...
I think the familiarity is there.
Yeah. But is there still that stigma among other nurses and doctors and the people you work with that if you call for help that you're kind of unfit for that department?
I don't think so.
You don't see that?
I do and I don't. But I do think it's getting better. I don't think it's as bad as it used to. But if I'm sort of going through something, I feel like I could call any of my coworkers and
I'm not talking about. I don't mean just your coworkers because we talk about stuff.
Sure.
I'm saying call that number.
Oh yeah.
For help, actually getting.
Yeah.
Not that we're not professionals at what we do, but
we are
as
not
far as
professionals in mental health
goes, is what I'm getting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that actual mental health doctor, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then looking like, because I know a lot of people pride themselves on being able to do the job and be okay.
Sure.
Where it's hard to ask for help, and then if you ask for help. And that you look up to that person, now what are they? Because now you become self-conscious. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting at.
Sure. Yeah. I could see it, for sure.
But you think it's... But
I think it's getting better, though,
better, which is what we want. I mean, I want people to ask for help before they get too far down that rabbit hole. And can't dig themselves out. You get stuck in Wonderland.
Right.
Essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, you do.
What would you say to any other nurses, ER nurses, floor nurses, flight nurses, S.A.N.E nurses that are watching this or thinking about doing it? Somebody that may be in nursing school deciding on a specialty path. What, based off your experience already, what would you say to them?
Know your limits. I think that's one thing I didn't know when I got into this. I didn't, like I said earlier, I didn't know how I was going to start acting to my family or how I was going to start acting to my friends, and there's no way of knowing, really, but I was lucky enough that I had family and friends to call me out, and not everybody has that support system. So I think if you know sort of where you can draw a line between home and work and your social life and work, then it will be a much easier transition, or a seamless transition, than getting, like you said, getting into a rabbit hole that you can't get yourself out of.
Yeah.
So just a level of self-awareness.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, and that takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. And I'm not saying people have to can't get into nursing if they're not there, but being aware of self-progress is important.
So whenever you were going through nursing school, I mean, did they talk about that at all, like the mental health aspect of what you were going to face? Or, was it just like with the fire department of, oh, well, you're going to see some shit, but suck it up?
Yeah, I think in nursing school, they tell you, oh, it's going to be a stressful job, or it's going, you're going to have hard days, and you're going to need resources and stuff. But the emphasis isn't there on, different parts of nursing, because, if you work in forensics, you're going to see certain things. If you work in an ICU, you're going to see certain things. And, your exposure is different wherever you go. And that's something I think nursing school doesn't really consider or account for, only because there's so many specialties out there. It's touched on. I remember in nursing school probably having a class where we did a couple weeks over self-care and stuff, but that was it. There's not really a whole lot of, this is what you're going to need and this is what you're actually going to see. And you never heard, real stories from people or, you know, like
Right.
accounted information that people have actually gone through. It's just kind of a surface level.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah. Just gloss it over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's that they don't care or anything. I just think that it's, one, touchy, and two, a lot to cover.
Yeah, well, there's so much when you go to nursing school that you got to cover.
Yeah.
And you got your 4-year degree, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, in those 4 years, there's so much information you have to go over just in medicine alone. Where ours is, I think it took me 17 months to get my medical license. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was fast paced, but
Sure.
we also I had to experience some of it, but everything was kind of touched on, including and mental health was like a 30-minute conversation.
Yeah.
For us, and then that was just, and I'm talking about just ours, you know, with what we learned, not mental health as far as patient goes. That was a little more in depth because you're going over stuff. But
Yeah. And we had I remember having a semester that covered mental health and doing clinicals in mental health, but nothing ever really focused on like nurses' mental health.
Right.
And, like you know, like I said, maybe a couple weeks of a class, but nothing like it, you know, it should be like its own course, you would think. Like,
Yeah.
But it sounds like it should be.
You know, processing self-trauma and
Yeah. Self-care in general.
self-care in general, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And one thing I've noticed too with, you know, your 12-hour shifts in the ER, 12 or 24-hour shifts at the fire station, it's so hard. It seems like it's almost like a trauma dump because you're going throughout the day. It's one after another, and all of a sudden your shift's over and you got a load of shit on your plate that you got to deal with for, you know, now it all catches up to you. Now the adrenaline wears off and it hits you all at once. Yeah. It's not just one call, you know, or one patient that was hard. It's 5 or 6 that were hard that you never dealt with. You took it right on to the next one, and now all of a sudden you've got to deal with it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many days I've gotten back into my car after a long shift and been like, what just happened? Like, what time is it? Have I really been here for 12 hours?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know, you've seen A, B, C, D, and then you're like, what? I don't even remember what B was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it's, you know, processing it when you leave that way. By the time you do get home, whether it's a 15-minute drive or a 45-minute drive, you're not coming in guns a-blazing and firing up at your family or your boyfriend, wife, husband, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Some of those days you just don't even turn the radio on the drive home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pull up in the driveway and just sit.
I do that all the time. Yes. Open the garage door.
Take the long way home, go the back way, and start hitting those country roads for me. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and everybody, you know, processes things differently, and sometimes, you know, that's all you need. You just need a few extra minutes to just kind of let that stuff out, and, you know, if you need to yell in your car, or
Put on some Whitney Houston and scream your little ass off.
The other night I came home and I think my radio was so loud. I can't remember. I think Blake was at the house or something. I don't know, but it was so loud you could hear it probably down the street. And I like see him peek his head through the garage door and he was like, "Hey, you okay? You good?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. It's fine."
so like at least you have that. He's there, you know, or it sounds like he's there most of the time.
Yeah, he's there sometimes. Yeah.
But like for me, if I come home and it's not a weekend, my wife's already at work.
Oh, sure.
By the time I get home, so there's nobody in the house, and it's just you. I mean, so you sometimes talking about things help, you know, just your mood.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Helps, but you got no one to talk to sometimes.
Yeah. And he's really good about, you know, if I have a bad day or something and I'm like, "Hey, I'm getting off late tonight, but I kind of want to stay up and eat popcorn," or, "Hey, I'm getting off late, but I don't want to see anybody." Like, he's good, like, knowing whether or not I need him to be at the house or not.
Good. That helps a lot.
Yes.
So you've got him trained, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, Blake, when you watch this.
Yeah. It's all right, man. They train us all.
Yes.
My wife's got me dialed in for the most part. I did laundry all day yesterday. Yeah, I did.
I was fine. I was thinking about mine. I'm like, man, I'm still on the training leave.
You got laundry to do?
No, my wife she doesn't let me touch the washer and dryer. I will break it.
Goodness.
So
you want to talk about spoiled rotten? That's that guy.
my wife's. I've been spoiled my whole life. My mom spoiled me, my brother. because she always did the cooking and cleaning. Like, I knew if I had to clean my room, if I waited long enough, my mom would do it.
Oh, the worst.
Oh, I'm horrible. And now, like, my wife, she cooks dinner feeds me breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like, she's been off for because she had surgery, but she's still cooking, does the laundry, doesn't like the way I clean, so she just cleans. I do dishes. That's one thing I do. I do dishes. But other than that, I mean, I'm sitting there watching TV, and she'll bring me a plate for dinner. I am spoiled rotten.
It's the life.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I got lucky. I know that.
I learned. I always had a list of tasks, and I learned if you just don't do them that well, you don't get asked to do them again.
Oh.
He just keeps lowering that bar for himself.
Until you do it well one time.
Yeah, and then,
Yeah.
I'm stuck
And then
on it.
you're yeah.
That's usually how I got assigned those tasks. Was like, oh, you were really good at that. You're doing it from now on. I'm like, well, shit.
But my wife really helped me get through
Yeah.
all the stuff I had, and I think that was because she does spoil me, part of it, and she's so good at. She's a nurturer, and she wants to take care of people.
Yeah.
Where I'm the exact opposite. I am. I'm just don't go over there. Just don't touch me. And she if something bad happens to her, she wants to be held and stuff, and
Yeah.
but she knows how to give me my space, and which helps. And
Yeah.
so I mean, everybody deals with it differently, and having that
For sure.
significant other helps.
Yeah.
Because they know what you want, what you need,
Right.
even if sometimes you don't.
Yeah. My mom's really good about it too. My sister, probably the least emotional person you'll ever meet. Like, she doesn't have feelings. They're just not there. So I call her and I'm like, having a really bad day, and she's like, well, you want to go get some chicken nuggets or something? Like, that's like,
Yes.
she is just,
Yes, I do.
but she is just so like surface level sometimes.
But sometimes all you need is that chicken nugget, though.
Sometimes.
It depends on where you get it from, I guess.
Yeah, if I need somebody to like put me in my place, that's her.
And sometimes you need that reality check, too.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Even with a bad day. Snap
sure.
it back.
For sure.
So.
All right. Well, Jeannie, thank you for coming and sharing.
You guys.
It was
Thanks
enlightening.
for having me.
Yeah. And
Yeah, we learned a few things about some of the different jobs nurses do that we didn't know about, and more in depth about it, which is always nice. And
so, yeah, thanks for coming by. And everybody out there, if you're struggling, reach out. You're not alone, so there are
There's
resources out there.
So many great advocacy programs in the Kansas City metro area. And a lot of things I didn't even realize were there until I got into forensic nursing. And yeah, I think, COVID hit those hard too, because you have these advocacy programs that usually come into hospitals and provide resources for patients. So now everything's over the phone with COVID, and everything is still there.
Yeah.
so can
Nothing's
they
left.
call, if they need to, they can call the hospital's main line and get those numbers if they need.
Yeah, they
Is
should
that
be able to.
possible? Yeah, there's one outlet, though. You don't have to Google it. Just call them at the hospitals.
Yeah.
For sure.
They'll
All
get
right.
you the right person.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.